Well, good evening once again, and welcome to the Wednesday evening devotional from the Cullendale Church of Christ. Maybe over the last few weeks you have found yourself in a situation where you've had more time to do things, but fewer people to do them with. This has been a time where we have had to try to keep in contact with many of the people that are closest to us in different ways. Maybe you've spent more time on the phone over the past few weeks than you normally would have. Or maybe you've had to keep in touch with people through email or maybe different types of social media. Many people my age are having to use an app called Zoom. People my age remember Zoom as a children's program, but we're having to find new and creative ways to keep in touch with those that we love. Many congregations are live streaming their services and finding different ways to get the word out into the world as they used to. The point that I'm making is that we're trying to communicate with those that we don't have physical contact with. But let me ask you this. What about the communication that you have with your Heavenly Father? Have you had more time to pray but found yourself praying less often because you're out of your normal routine? Or maybe you have more time to pray, but you're just not comfortable praying because you haven't spent a lot of time doing it. Let me remind you first of Romans chapter 8, verses 26 and 27, where Paul says, "Likewise, the Spirit also helps in our weaknesses. For we do not know what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Now he who searches the hearts knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because he makes intercession for the saints according to the will of God." You see, for the faithful Christian, the most important thing to do is just put the effort into praying. Put the effort into communicating with your Heavenly Father, and know that God has his ways of interpreting exactly what we mean, even if we can't express it in words. But let me suggest this evening a practical way of praying. If you're searching for a way to pray and, again, not really knowing how, let me suggest praying through the Psalms. This is something that I heard someone preach on not too long ago, and it made sense to me. As you pray through the Psalms, you find different ways that your prayers can improve. By reading the Psalms and then praying them ourselves, our prayers can improve. One way we do that is we're using language that the inspired writers actually used. In other words, you're using God's own words back to him when you communicate. We can be confident when we do this that he approves of these words and these phrases that we're using. But also, you may find things to pray about that you haven't really thought about before by praying through the Psalms. You see, this can broaden your communication with God in ways, again, that you know that he approves. For example, if you're praying through the 23rd Psalm, this is a psalm that many of us are familiar with. But if you turn to Psalm 23, and as you're reading through that, this is how something like this may sound. You may read Psalm 23, verse 1, "The Lord is my shepherd." And that may make you pause and thank God for being your shepherd. For being someone who is constantly watching out for you, it reminds you of that, and you can thank the Lord just for being your shepherd. And as you continue on, the writer says, "I shall not want." You can think of the many different ways that God has taken care of you, and the many ways that you don't really have any need of anything. And you can thank God that you shall not want. And as you continue on, "He maketh me lie down in green pastures." Maybe you think of all of the green pastures that are in your life, all of the good situations, and you thank God for those green pastures. Or maybe you're at a time where you are discouraged, and maybe you just want to ask God for green pastures. Is there anything wrong with asking God for green pastures? Are you asking too much? Not when this is the inspired word. You're asking him for green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. The same thing would apply there. Maybe you are reminded of the peace that is in your life at that moment, and you can thank God that He has led you to still waters. Or maybe you are living through a time of turmoil at this moment, and maybe you want to ask God to lead you to still waters. You can see the possibilities as you pray through this 23rd Psalm, and it would apply as praying through the Psalms in any other way as well. So let me encourage you to look through the Psalms, read through them, and use these words to pray back to God. And I hope this helps you find one more way to use God's Word to grow closer to Him.